Come on, YouTube. There it is. We're good. We're live. Welcome back to the Fish On Podcast. This is episode 12. We've got Ben and Adam, of course, me, Jeff, and today we're joined by Adam Berkelmans, the Intrepid Eater, and we're going to talk about cooking your catch. But before we get into the meat of the podcast, I just want to say, if you're watching this live, whether you're listening to this on your favorite podcast streaming platform or the video on demand on YouTube later on, thanks for tuning in. If you're watching live or the VOD, please like the live stream and do some chatting in the comment in the chat. Leave us a comment so we can see what you're thinking about the podcast. And if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, leave us a review. Helps us out, and we really appreciate it. So,
and if you have any questions for Adam, our guest, leave them in the live chat, and we may answer them later on in the show.
Yeah, that one.
True. And thanks for joining us, Adam.
Thanks for having me.
Should we establish off the bat here that I'm the real Adam, and then there's just Adam?
Yes, the REEL Adam, not like the real versus fake Adam.
Why don't we let the audience interpret that however they'd like? It's not up to you.
Well, how about I'm the real Adam, like REAL?
Oh, wow. R-E-E-L. I like. There we go. That solves the problem.
That makes it really confusing for Ben and I, though. Like,
yeah,
super
we
confusing.
Still have to say the real Adam A or the real Adam B. Is that how we're going to do it? Who's A and who's B?
Well, Adam, the Intrepid Eater would be Adam B. Adam Berkelmans. Am I saying that right, by the way? Berkelmans?
Yeah, that's right.
Beauty.
That would be awfully embarrassing.
It would be super embarrassing. So we'll start off by, Adam, why don't you tell us about yourself and the Intrepid Eater and how that all happened? Where did that come from? When did you start that? How'd you come to be the Intrepid Eater?
Sure. Well, as it's been said already, I'm Adam Berkelmans. I run kind of a brand or a project called the Intrepid Eater, which is had its origins at the beginning of the pandemic, like so many other things. I found myself kind of without a job. My job had kind of dried up a little bit because of the pandemic. They weren't sure if they're going to carry on or not, and I thought that was a good time to maybe make a change in my life, in my career. And I was kind of thinking, should I go back to school or should I, what should I do? At the time, I was an organic farmer. I've had a long history of all sorts of strange jobs, mostly in the outdoors. And I started posting food on my Facebook, and I kind of enjoyed it. And I started getting the twinklings of an idea and kind of opened it up into the Intrepid Eater and started doing that just as a thing to do. I was taking some online courses in like nutrition and food kind of courses, the science of food, and thinking maybe I was going to go into university again for that. And then I started just really enjoying this Intrepid Eater thing, and I was posting food like on Instagram and Facebook, posting the kind of the meals, talking about them, going into the history of the science or whatever behind them, and getting a lot of good feedback and getting people who weren't just my friends and family starting to follow me, which is kind of cool. And then I eventually just gave up all my other plans and just stuck with the Intrepid Eater thing. So as the months wore on a little bit, I was living at my cottage just north of Kingston and was able, because of the pandemic, there was nothing to do. I was just outside all the time. So I was foraging a lot. I was fishing. I was getting into hunting. So a lot of my food was wild-based, and that just had such a good reception. I'd post something wild and people would really, really connect with it. And I really enjoy cooking wild food a lot. Like, that's where I would love to cook more of. Either farmed or gardened or harvested myself or wild. And so I kind of took the cue and kept running with the wild food thing and just kept making food and posting. I developed a website, and then I have a podcast now, and it's been a few years, and I'm starting to just develop this into something that's really fun and really cool, and I've just been thoroughly enjoying it. So it's kind of just fell into my lap. I never really intended this to be a thing, but I'm super happy that it is a thing.
That's super cool. So you your previous job was farming, and you said it was a bunch of random jobs before that. But what were you doing before that that related to cooking? Why were you so drawn to cooking and food to begin with? Did it come from organic farming, or was it from before that?
It was well before. I think I was born with a love for food. Like there's footage of me as or pictures of me as a little tiny child looking into the fridge for a long time, just with my mind a whir.
Me
And
too.
Me also.
Yeah. Yeah, I just would think about food all the time, and I wanted to try everything. Like I was very picky would not be the word to describe me as a child. I was just ready to try anything. I was really interested in cooking. I started at like 7 years old. I was cooking for the family by 11 or 12, like normal, all the meals,
Wow,
not all of them, but most of the meals. And it was just a very regular thing. And
that's awesome. I was
high
quite the
school,
opposite. I was the guy that I was the kid that my parents would be getting pizza, and I would be having peanut butter and jam. I was so picky when I was younger. Yeah.
Nothing's
I mean
changed.
pizza.
I was a super picky eater as a kid. Like Ben, I could have lived off peanut butter and jam sandwiches as a child. Like that's all I could eat. That
Yo,
and bacon.
you guys were eating luxury. It was all about like raw hot dogs and Kraft like singles slices of cheese. Just like I would wrap the hot dogs in the cheese, or it was like a ketchup sandwich. That was my favorite.
Ketchup
Wow.
sandwich.
Oh,
Oh my god.
yes. Oh yes.
The ketchup held off scurvy for you, probably.
Yeah, there's a few other conditions I've gained from it, but I kept the scurvy away. So
Okay, so before we get too far ahead, Adam, you said you had a website. What's that website, and where else can people find you on the internet?
Sure, the website's theintrepid.eater.com. You can find me on Instagram, The Intrepid Eater, Facebook as The Intrepid Eater. I have a podcast called Antler and Fin.
Oh, cool.
A different style podcast. It's like an audible recipe with a whole bunch of interesting information inspired by the recipe. They're about
Wow.
15 minutes long, and it's just a really cool little interesting soundbite. It's called Antler and Fin. It's available everywhere. It's through Harvesting Nature, an organization I work with a lot. I think that's it. Oh, and then I have a YouTube channel as well that I have some videos on as well, so you can find me in any of those places.
So there you
So
go.
I have a question for you, and it kind of stems off of all of this. You talked about like how it started, but I'm wondering like what is it? Is it just these things? Like is this something you're making a living off of? Is it something you want to make a living off of? And if so, how? Because I'd like to do that too.
I mean, the three of us are all creators, and you're living what we're all trying to do right now. So that's a
Mhm.
little bit of stardom here for us, I guess.
Well, there's I'm still in the process of making a living out of it, I guess, like or attempting to make a living out of it.
Yeah.
So it's been an investment in time and uh, lack of income coming in, which I think any artist or creator kind of deals with.
Hello.
Yeah,
Starving artist. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. The way I look at it is, say you're going to start your own business, you have to buy potentially like a traditional business. You got to buy a storefront or rent a storefront, maybe hire some people. You got to buy a stock of things. We're working 2, 3, 4, 5 years before you're making anything back from all your investments. I didn't have to put anything into this, so it's
Mhm.
other than maybe a camera, a couple grand for the little things.
So what's the ultimate goal? Like what if you could be making a living off of this, what would you want to be doing? Like is it the podcast? Is it YouTube? Like is it recipes? What how would you like to like what do you want this to turn into?
Kind of I'm the type of person who never focuses on one thing. Like I'm a bit of a ED kind of kid in terms of what just interested in everything. I want to catch all the fish. I don't want to just catch walleye. I want to catch all the fish. Like I can't stop. So I think take work in the same way, and I think I would hope to have several income streams, workshops, guided hikes, writing articles, selling recipes to magazines, my videos and website, and just have like 20 prison the fire kind of thing, and
For
hope
sure.
that that's enough to make a living off in the end of it.
Cool.
It's starting to happen.
Well,
It's starting to slowly like transform into an actual full-time job, and money's starting to come in, and it's nice to see it happening now. It's cool.
That's awesome, man.
Very
And,
cool.
and it's you can tell the kind of hard work you put into it as well. If you're listening to this or watching it, make sure you go check out Adam at his website and on his Instagram specifically, because there's a whole whackload of just absolutely mouth-watering pictures of all the food that he makes and the recipes that go along with it, so that you can make that food too. And yeah, there's one in particular that I'll get into a little bit later that I haven't made yet or haven't tried. That it's like every time I see a picture of it. Anyways, we'll talk about it later.
Let's
so
get
I
into it
gotta
now.
ask. Well, hold on. I gotta ask. What, like, if you had like 3 ingredients that you had to bring with you camping, you didn't know what you were gonna catch as far as fish, but only 3 ingredients, and that includes your oil, that includes your spices. You can bring whatever pots and pans, but 3 ingredients. What are you bringing to make sure that you can have a tasty fish, whatever you catch?
Salt, butter, and garlic.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, go classic. Go to the
You gotta go
staple.
classic, yeah, because you could go with a lot of different things, but salt, butter, and garlic is gonna be good no matter what fish you catch. You can make
Those
it
are the
good.
spices of life.
Yeah.
Like
But okay, so how do you make the the butter go a few days while camping?
Start
just
it
get
off
salt and
frozen.
butter.
Okay.
If I'm going camping for a long time, I switch to margarine, which is the only time I switch to margarine. Just because it will
Interesting.
last longer. It doesn't melt quite as readily.
Okay.
Yeah, so if it's gonna be like a sweaty, backpacky kind of camp, I'd probably go margarine instead.
Good
At
to
home,
know.
I would never use it. Yeah.
That's really smart. I never would have
Yeah.
thought of that. Never would have thought
So
of that.
keeping it in a well-sealed container and dunking it in the lake overnight to
Oh,
keep it cool,
shoot. Okay.
like a dry
Okay.
bag or something. Yeah, kind of a bit of a
I hope the
refrigerator
bears
unless
don't
it's really
sniff
warm.
that out.
Yeah.
I've heard of
bear and I came across like a tub of butter sitting in the lake, I'd be having a field day. I pretty much am a bear, and I pretty much would do that with butter anyways. So I guess it's all gonna come true.
something randomly came to mind when you mentioned the tub of butter. Have you ever heard of people transporting eggs in flour?
Oh, but that's
No.
interesting.
So I've tried it once and it worked. But yeah, if you pack your eggs and you put flour all around them, it seems to preserve them, and they won't crack as easily. So something to try out.
Preserve them, like keep them from going bad.
Or well, it's like stop them from cracking. And
Mm.
What?
if you get eggs that are from, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, because you should know about maybe, but eggs from a farm that's like organic and the eggs haven't been washed, you can keep them unrefrigerated as long as you keep
That's
turning them. Okay.
Wow,
You don't even have to be organic.
Yeah.
That's in Europe. In Europe, they don't refrigerate their eggs. They just sit on the counter, and it's because when eggs are laid, they have a membrane on them that can preserve the egg itself. But once you wash it, you wash the membrane off, and then it has to be refrigerated because then outside things can get through the eggshell. So in Europe, they don't wash them off, and in America, they do. So, or North America, they do. So yeah, and they can just last for like weeks on your counter like that.
Wow.
If you just buy farm fresh eggs, you don't have to worry about refrigerating them.
That's cool. So if you're like on your way to a camping trip, you could keep that in mind if you had a place to stop for farm fresh eggs.
Holy
Plus, you get
smokes.
farm fresh eggs, and you get to support a farmer. Local farmer,
true.
everyone wins.
That
How
is
long
an
really, though?
incredible little tidbit of knowledge that I bet not a lot of people know about. Because I
Unless
didn't
you've
until
raised
now.
chickens,
Yeah.
eggs. Unless you've raised eggs, then you don't. Sorry.
How long though? How long could you keep eggs out like that? Do you know?
Uh,
I assume eventually they go bad.
Eventually, yeah. I think, like, yeah, I would say a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Quote me too strong on that, but I think.
And is it true that you have to rotate them so the yolk doesn't touch the shell?
Never heard of that before, but it makes sense to me. I've never had eggs last so long that I had to worry about it, but it makes sense to rotate them. Just do it out of habit, anyways.
So, as an avid cuisinist, cook yourself, what's the latest ingredient or cooking method that you've got into that you just super excited about, or that you haven't explored enough yet?
There's it's Moroccan dish in a dish, so it's like the food dish and the dish that is cooked in. It's called a tagine. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
No.
It's like a clay pot that's like a conical shape, and then like a bottom kind of dish, and cooks things super slowly and gently, and the steam rises in a certain fashion up this cone, and like condensation happens, and it's this whole super old ancient cooking science that happens in Morocco, and
Wild.
yeah, it's really cool. So there's this dish. The dish that you cook in is called a tagine as well, and you can make a tagine in like say like a Dutch oven or something too. It's not quite the same. It doesn't have the same effect as this cooking thing, and pretty resistant to buying kitchen gadgets and tools because I could easily overwhelm myself with a kitchen full of it. I'm interested in all cuisines at all points in time. So it took me probably 25 years to buy myself a tagine, which I did a month ago or 2 months ago, maybe. And
Awesome.
I've been experimenting with it, and I've actually been thinking of my next thing I'm gonna cook in is like a fish tagine. So keep your eyes open for that because that will come out sooner or later if I manage to do it right.
That sounds.
Do you have a certain species in mind?
Wild.
Hoping something caught through the ice, so either crappie or pike, probably, or perch.
Cool.
If I can get out on the ice anytime soon, hopefully.
So that's a good segue into the recipe that I was talking about earlier. And Adam already knows because every time he posts about it, I always comment like a big drooly kind of thing about it. But so he made a Nashville hot pike sandwich, and if you go to his Instagram or his website and you see the pictures of this thing, it is just unreal amazing looking. Like I want to take a bite out of my monitor or like my phone or whatever device I'm looking at this picture on. And I the next time I bring pike home, I'm gonna try and make that recipe. So I want to know where you came up with that. Like, how did you come up with the Nashville hot pike sandwich, and like where that came from? What was the inspiration for that sandwich? I'm very personally interested to know.
So I'm kind of like a maniac with food. Like I spend an inordinate amount of time. I can't say that. Inordinate amount of time researching different cuisines, whether they're like regional American or European or Asian or anywhere. I get in these. You know how you can get in like a Wikipedia hole or a YouTube hole of some sort and keep following. I do that on a very regular basis with all these cuisines, and I find these dishes that really excite me, and then I save them for later. So I have like the bookmarks in my computer. I probably have like 1,000 bookmarks. I have like several hundred ideas just written down that I pop in my head in the middle of the night. Some of these things are very unknown, and like for supper tonight, I made this Georgia from like Eastern Europe mushroom dish. Can't even remember the name, but the only recipes I could find online were like written by Georgian women and badly transcribed into English, and it barely made sense. Or sometimes it's something like a Nashville hot chicken sandwich, which is like pretty big nowadays. Like it's pretty popular. There's like fast food chains that are doing it and everything now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't only go with the esoteric stuff. So sometimes I like the kind of popular stuff too. Anyways, I take all those cool recipes and the things that kind of stood out to me, and then I try to apply them to like I'm gathering at the time. So when I was kind of a little bit obsessed with hot chicken sandwiches, I was ice fishing. I pulled out a nice big pike out of the ice and thought, well, what's stopping me? Fried fish is awesome, obviously. Fried chicken is also awesome, but what's stopping me from swapping the chicken out with the fish in the sandwich? And that's all it takes. And then, and then I did it. It was the best fish sandwich I've ever had in my life. It's generally pretty critical of my own cooking, but that was the best fish sandwich I've ever had in my life.
Awesome.
Nice. So what are some of the ingredients?
Before we get too far into this, I want to just point out one more thing about Adam's website, theintrepid.eater.com. If any of you have ever been to any kind of cooking websites or recipe websites, and you go to click on a recipe to find the recipe, you have to go through like this humongous wall of text and story before you even come close to the recipe. And Adam's site does not do that. If you click on a recipe to go find out how to make this thing, the first thing you see is the recipe and how to make it. And so I just wanted to say thank you for that. And everybody, whoever is looking for recipes, thanks you and appreciates that fact.
For sure. It's wonderful that we don't have to hear about how your laundry inspired your latest dish.
Yeah.
That's great.
I look at, like, I hold a world record for how many recipes I look at online. I just go through tens of thousands of recipes, and I hate it. I hate that. And I don't want to do it myself. And the reason people do it is because it gets your Google SEO, search engine optimization points up and all this nonsense. I'm like, I don't care. I'm willing to take the hit. You don't have to scroll through all my bullshit to get to the recipe. If you want to read my bullshit, you can follow me on Facebook and read it. I post every day and talk about all these things. But if you want the recipe's there for you, waiting, and you don't have to scroll through anything to get to it. So
that's great. So you're trying to give strictly valuable, high nutritional content is what you're looking at.
Exactly.
There you go. Yeah. Nicely done.
So our friend Brody is asking right now, and I think it's a great question. I don't want to like interrupt with too many other questions, but he's asking, how much importance do you place on bleeding fish? Do you think it affects the taste? Do you think that it's noticeable? And how soon do you think they should be bled if you do go down that route?
Something I just started doing this year. I've been hearing a lot about it, interested in it. You kind of get into your habits when you're catching fish. Like, I'm sure you guys know too. Like you hear something new and you're like, well, I should maybe apply that to the way I fish. And then a year or two goes by. But that last year I started doing it in the summer, and basically pull the fish out of the water. If I'm going to keep it, I cut it right away. I bleed it right there and then. And I put it in the water as I bleed because the blood can coagulate very quickly in a fish and stop the bleeding from happening. But if it's in the water, it will continue to bleed without coagulation. I have noticed that the fish, like the fish seems less fishy to me. And I don't know if that's like a placebo effect of just because I've been doing the extra step, but everything I've been reading, it seems to be like the more care you take with your fish right off that very first step, the less fishy your fish will be in the end, and the more tasty it will be. And so I've been trying to take more and more steps towards doing that. So I think bleeding not necessary, but if you want to elevate the flavor of your fish, if you're gonna do a big fish fry and you're just frying a bunch of fish in oil with fish crisp, like, probably don't need to go through all the effort because all those flavors will mask it. But if you're gonna be like steaming your fish or doing something kind of nice and delicate with it, then definitely go and do that, I would say.
So I'll tell you that last year I started doing that myself, and I don't think it's a placebo. I notice a huge difference, and almost like 99% of the time I'm like frying my fish with fish crisp, and I do notice a difference. So for somebody like me who doesn't like the taste of fish, like that fishy taste, I hate that. So I generally only eat like white flesh fish, like even for like seafood from like the ocean, and I know because of that reason exactly. And I've noticed that when you bleed the fish, you dispatch the fish that you're going to harvest right away, bleed them. What I didn't know about was the the keeping them in water while you're bleeding them, that's a good tidbit. But yeah, it makes a big difference to me. I agree with you on that one.
Adam, I think you cut out a little bit while you were explaining, but you said you gut them right away. Like, is that what you were saying? You gut them in
don't get
part
it. I
of that
just
process?
sorry, just cut them right away. I cut the gills right away,
Okay.
so then they
Okay,
just
yeah.
bleed out like.
And is that how you dispatch the fish, or do you give it a bonk?
You should give it a bonk and then cut the gills.
Yeah, because I've heard you want, like, ideally you would want the heart to continue to pump because that's going to help get rid of that blood. And I, when you bonk a fish, it kind of makes them like brain dead, right? So I wonder if the heart's still pumping. I don't know, but yeah, I've
You
heard
kind
it.
of want them to be out of their misery, though. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So there's a
safe.
method, and we talked about it. We talked about it last year, and that's A.K.A, and that's the method of dispatching a fish and spiking it in the brain, and then taking another tube and running it down the spinal cord, and that destroys the spinal cord. And so it basically makes it so the fish feels nothing. It's brain dead. There's no trauma. There's no stress. There's no pain. There's no anything. It's just the heart continues to beat and it bleeds out and it gets rid of all that stuff. I don't have the equipment to do that kind of thing though. Like you need like a pretty specialized piece of equipment to properly perform A.K.A on a fish.
I'd be interested in it, but it's something I'll probably take a couple years to adopt into my fishing regimen.
I will tell you this
So,
though.
I
So not for pike, but for fish like crappie and perch, I don't have a brain spike, but I have a knife, and so I use a knife and I do that into the brain to make them brain dead and kill them that way, but it keeps the heart beating. But for pike, I can never get it right with pike, so I just bonk pike and walleye too. I can never get the brain in the first go, so instead of just stabbing a fish over and over again, I give them the bonk to make it as quick as possible for them.
So
it comes
what's
down
your
to that for me. Just dispatching the fish as mainly and quickly as possible is pretty important to me. So
yeah.
I tried to just cut the gills, and I felt bad the whole time. Just didn't like the feeling it gave me. So I just bonk first, and if there's a little bit of blood left in it, then that's not a huge deal for me.
what's your favorite way of acquiring
You cut out Ben acquiring what?
protein? The protein of your meal. When you're going to like get a dish, what's your favorite way to try and get that protein? Do you prefer to hunt, fish, go to the grocery store, go to the meat market, go to your local butcher? And you can be honest.
Hard question.
I mean, I know you're talking to some anglers here. You don't have to like impress us and say fishing. Just, what's your favorite?
At the grocery store. Well, I do really enjoy going to like Asian markets and Middle Eastern markets and stuff. I really get a lot of excitement walking in there and finding all these new interesting things, including at the protein, whether it's fish or not. Nothing beats catching it with your own hands, like fishing and hunting. I don't know if I could choose one. Like when June comes around, I'm like, yeah, fishing for sure, 100% is the best way to get my protein. And then October rolls around, I'm like, yeah, screw fishing. Hunting is the best way to get my protein. So it's just the way I'm feeling in the season, you know.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's fair, yeah.
And working with wild food, you get to actually really live within the season so much more too, and which is something I really enjoy about it. It's like I catch fish certain times of year. I only hunt certain times of year. That's when I get my protein. I do go to the grocery. I do buy stuff at the grocery store a little bit, and I also work with small farms and farmsteads and homesteads, and I do a lot of my own butchering at home. So I'll buy or be given like half a pig or whole pigs or different things like that.
Wow, cool.
Do all that myself too. So, and that's also seasonal. Like you do that in the fall. So I found since I started this Intrepid Eater thing and stopped relying as much on grocery stores, that protein in particular I get, but also the vegetables and everything too, just rely completely on seasons. So I eat differently at different times of year. Like right now, I don't have much fish, but the ice freeze is more on my lake, and I'll have more fish, and then when it rolls around, I get tons, and then in the fall, it's mostly like geese and deer and everything. So
Cool.
really starts rolling around.
That's
Have
awesome.
you ever eaten carp?
I have. Just made it a goal last year to catch a carp, and then I never ended up doing it. To start cooking it myself and come up with some better recipes for it. But I've had smoked carp from Eastern European deli in Toronto. That was really good, actually. But that's a goal of mine is to make carp great again.
That's the thing, right? Like
Carp and
everyone-
freshwater
everyone-
drum. Sheepshead too
Yeah,
gets a
drum
bad
too.
rap for that.
Well, I've never met someone who was like, "Oh yeah, carp's the way to go. Definitely try it." Everyone just has nothing but horrible things to say about it.
Well, they just say
But-
it's like dog food, typically.
Yeah, I've also like there are the few people you can find online who say if you do it right, then it can actually be quite good. So I was curious as someone who experiments so much, like if it's something you've tried.
And that's the question I just see it everywhere I go. People say that tastes like shit. That tastes like shit. Carp tastes like shit. Geese taste like shit. Everything tastes like shit. And you're like, does it, or are you a bad cook, or did your grandfather tell you?
Fish crisp can't fix everything.
Maybe your grandfather told you it tastes like shit, and then your dad said that, then you say that, but did you ever actually
Fair.
try it?
Mm-hmm.
And the carp, for example, which is like the most detested fish in our waterways, I would say, like people want to throw up even talking about eating them sometimes. You go to England and they're one of the best sport fish. They go crazy over it. It's the biggest sport fishing in England is carp. You go into Eastern Europe and they're buying carp for Christmas. Their Christmas dinner is a carp. They bring it home and they put it in the bathtub overnight, and then they cut up this carp, and the whole family gets together and enjoys it for Christmas. That's their most special meal of the year. So where does the breakdown happen there?
I think
Part
it's
of
because
it
we have
is-
other fish that are more fun to fish for that we would just rather.
Potentially.
Because I was gonna
Yeah,
say the next hurdle that I have is like, what's
Whoa,
fun
whoa,
about
whoa.
fishing for carp?
Let's not say
Sorry.
that fishing for carp isn't fun, okay? Because have you ever fished for carp?
No, because I'm not interested
Well,
by it. But hey,
so
to
you
each
don't
their
know.
own. Just saying.
I've also never fished for carp, but it's something I wanted to try. And actually, there's a couple people that I've reached out to that maybe this summer will be the summer I actually get to go out with them and do some carp fishing. Fun. Because okay, so pound for pound, carp fight like crazy. Like I don't know if you've ever seen anybody fight a carp. They're like they can get humongous. Like carp can get like 20, 30, 40 pounds, like huge fish, right?
Well, this is the other thing. Like, not only are they a fun fight, but they're quite common and easy to catch, and it's a big fish. Like, if you're trying to feed a family, it's a lot. It's a lot of meat.
For sure.
Like, it's a big
Yeah.
fish. You
But
catch
You got a
20,
lot of
30 pound
dogs,
carp.
too.
Yeah.
Who knows, man? The economy is taking a dump right now. Maybe people are gonna. Maybe Adam is gonna put carp back on the menu for many people in Canada and
Well,
US.
what's great is you can turn a can of corn, big thing of carp, or like one huge carp, right? So
Yeah.
you can really like upgrade your money there. You go from $1 to huge meal. But like I personally wouldn't want to fish for carp. I just can't. I don't like float fishing. I don't like leaving my rod dead sticked as much. Ice fishing is a stretch for me personally.
Okay. Let's get real for a second. And Adam, you said something earlier actually that it made me think of this, and I'm glad you're now bringing it up, Ben. But Adam, you're like, "Oh, I'll fish for anything. I just love fishing. I just want to fish." And here is Ben, just like calling himself out, like, "Oh, I don't like carp fishing, and I really don't like ice fishing." The
It's
truth
because it's
is that
not
now
musky
all of a
fishing.
sudden,
Not that I
exactly,
don't like ice
all he
fishing.
likes is musky fishing. I've never heard him talk so much shit about bass fishing as he has in like the last year. "Oh, you want to go bass fishing? It's boring."
At one point, he tried to claim that he wasn't a multi-species angler anymore.
That's right. Basically anything now that's not musky fishing, Ben doesn't like.
If it's
So
not musky
don't-
fishing, it's not cool for Ben.
That's right. It's boring.
I totally want to take this sweater off right now.
Hey, Adam, have you ever eaten muskie?
Oh, I haven't.
Would you?
I don't know. I would like nothing would stop me from eating it except that it's a rare fish that people get pretty uptight about eating.
Like Ben.
If that wasn't the case, then I would eat it with abandon. But since it's kind of like a cherished fish that's not as common as say bass or something, then I wouldn't be targeting it to eat. If I caught one and it wasn't going to make it, I would definitely eat it.
Real talk,
Do you
though,
ever-
like the unfortunate reality about muskie is that their populations are declining in many of the waters that they exist in. So it's good that people don't target them for like food and sustenance, I think. And
If you wanted to
Ben
be
would
like one of
agree.
those trolls, that's a great way to do it. Like become the guy known for eating muskie.
Oh, you would be so hated amongst a very small group of people.
That's a good way
How many
to.
views I would get?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. People,
followers.
if you want to be a troll, anyone out there who's looking to cause trouble, that's what you can do. Just go eat some muskie and
Don't do it.
tell
Don't
everyone
Don't
you're doing
encourage
it.
them.
don't keep muskie. Don't keep muskie.
Oh,
I'm
They
not
used
even a
to
muskie
serve it
angler,
at,
and
like-
I don't think people should keep muskie for that reason
They
alone.
used to have these big like national meetups for muskie, and back in the day, one of the things on the main course for everyone was a muskie steak. That was like many years ago. They don't do it anymore.
Yeah, you don't see that
Well,
anymore.
No.
you could feed the whole Thanksgiving dinner. Like you could fill a table full of muskie, cut those into steaks. You have big, thick pieces of meat.
Yeah.
Get a nice 50-inch muskie. That's a lot of steaks.
Oh yeah.
Imagine
And a
it
lot
tastes
of
much different
salty
than
muskie
pike.
angler tears to season it.
Well, this is another question that I'm kind of curious of. Like they say, the bigger the fish gets, the less tasty it is. Also, there's the question of like heavy metals too that it acquires because it's a bigger fish. But like typically they say, the bigger the fish, softer the meat sometimes, or the less tasty the meat. Have you found that's the case as well?
Not really. Though I'm not that great of a fisherman, I don't.
Yeah, welcome to the
Necessarily.
club, Adam.
Yeah.
You're in the right place here, buddy.
I enjoy it. I do it a lot, but I'm not great at it. But I don't tend to target huge fish because I'm more into it for the eating side than the sporting side. So they cross over a little bit too, but so I haven't eaten that many huge fish. But in terms of pike, 7-8 pound pike is totally delicious. Once you start getting maybe massive ones, maybe it's not, and I'd be more worried about the heavy metal thing than anything else at that point.
I thought that was like a concern because of age, though. Like the amount of time they've been in the water to accumulate heavy metals. I thought that was kind of the issue.
But that's
So,
kind
like,
of
if a pike or
coincides
if a
with size, though, right? Like typically,
well,
like,
does
that's
it?
gonna
Like, don't
coinc-
muskie grow
well,
really fast?
it can have to do with genetics too. But like I don't think what the discussion is muskie versus pike. It's just like the size of the fish. So a small pike would taste better than a bigger pike. That's the kind of argument that we're getting at. That's not necessarily muskie.
None of
versus
us
pike.
here are
Yeah, I know,
scientists.
but what I'm saying is
and
why, and is it the age? Like that's
No,
like,
it's the amount of fish that they eat.
yeah, it's
So,
their
like,
diet that
Yeah.
right.
So small fish consume those heavy metals, but the small fish have less of them, whereas the big fish consume a ton of smaller fish, and the heavy metals don't leave the body of the bigger fish.
I think it's
Or at
also
least
pretty
not as
dependent on
easily.
the body of water that you're catching fish out of too. Like a fish out of Lake Ontario isn't going to be as clean as a fish out of like say your lake, Adam. You know what I mean? Your back lake that there's no like industry around your lake that dumps its byproducts into the lake.
Although there was that huge spill that happened in Buck Lake.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Crazy.
some
that's right.
systems too. Some like the Rito system. They've given warnings about the Rito system because there used to be industry back in the day, and that's something that we sometimes forget about. Is that some of these back lakes did have big industry on them. Like Frontenac Park had a mica mine in the middle of it. So who knows what kind of chemicals were there from way, way, way long ago.
Yeah,
Maybe
there's
not
a lot of
but
there's a lot of mining on the little lakes in Eastern Ontario. There's a lot of little mines back in the day. Was how much effects that left in the lake. Like it seems like it's clean. You don't see it's just cottages. You don't see much, but maybe there's stuff in the past. But worry about that.
I don't
too
know.
much, but
Look,
it's really good to keep in mind.
maybe it's just me, but heavy metal in fish doesn't sound so bad. It did okay for Ben and I. We're like, turned it into metalheads.
Metal.
Okay, so I totally missed my opportunity to segue into the next thing that I want to talk about because you guys just like ramrodded through into the heavy metal conversation.
The
But I
best
want
way to segue is just use the word segue, and then you can talk about whatever you want afterwards.
I want to circle back to the pike and get on to the next topic that I wanted to talk about with Adam here, and that is, so people like me, when we harvest our fish, we take the fillets. If it's a walleye, we might take the cheeks, and then the rest of the fish gets discarded. Especially for a fish like pike, that's very bony. One of the more popular ways to fillet a pike is to take the 5 boneless fillets and, cut on the outside of those Y bones, but you're also leaving a lot of meat on the inside of the Y bones between like the spine and the Y bones. And there's all kinds of meat left on fish, not just pike, but all fish when we just use the fillets. One of the things that I've seen in your content is using the whole fish to make different dishes. Why is that important, and why should people start considering more ways to use more of the fish instead of just the fillets? How can people get creative with how to use those parts of the fish for ingredients?
Sure. Pretty passionate nose to tail eater, and found farming and taking lives of animals, taking lives of animals, hunting, taking lives of animals, fishing. The more I do it, the more the sense that I have to honor the animal in some way by using all of it, and not just like taking the choice bits and throwing the rest out.
Cool.
Yeah.
I've really applied that to everything in my life. And I eat a lot of organ meats. I eat a lot of everything, but I don't call myself the Intrepid Eater for nothing. The other night I had the intestines, which are really good. But just find
you just need them like spaghetti. Just kind of twirl them around your fork and slurp them up.
Well, that was one of your soft dishes, right? The one I think I saw your latest one. Yeah, okay. It was pork intestine, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Delicious, but not everyone's cup of tea for sure. If I take when I started fishing my own, my dad wasn't there anymore to fillet the fish, and then it was kind of like, when you're yourself for the first time on your own, I'm like, Jesus, I'm just wasting so much fish. I try to get better and better at filleting, and eventually it's like, I'm still wasting so much fish. There's meat all over this fish, and I'm just taking this like 2 little sections of it. Then you start looking in other cuisines and in places where food security isn't as good as ours, where you can't develop like a a belly like I have. You don't throw out that stuff. Yeah. You don't throw out that stuff. You just can't. It'd be crazy to throw out food because you don't know when you're going to get food again. So people in all these places have developed these recipes to use every part. So the recipes already exist out there. So you just have to, and Google exists, so you can just learn yourself and explore and find all these recipes. Then I started teaching myself how to use like the heads and how to use the parts and how to make stocks and soups and everything out of the fish, and applying the same thing to animals as well.
So, sorry, just kind of along those lines. If I were to like make a fish soup and I were to boil the pike head, would I get this like badass skull at the end of it with like pike teeth and all, or is that all kind of connected and would all fall apart?
You can get the mandible, like the lower jaw.
Okay.
Parts of the head, but there's a lot of like soft cartilage in the head. So it might just like fall apart on you.
Okay.
If you were very careful and didn't boil it, but kept it at like a bare simmer, and then very gently cradled it out, and then kind of went over it, you could then use some glue to keep it together. You could come out with a super cool pike head. I do keep all the mandibles, like the lower jaw with the nice big row of teeth on the bottom.
Cool.
I have those all over my house because I make pike head stuff all the time.
So I have a question for you with regards to making the soups specifically. So I mentioned earlier, like I don't like the fishy taste of many types of seafoods. When you make something like a pike head soup, does it have that fishy taste? because the flesh of pike doesn't have that fishy taste. So I don't know why the head would, but I've just never done it. So
Jeff, I have a question though for you. Have you ever like ate something that had the fishy taste? Because like something, especially with soup, I've smelt fishy soup before, and be like, I don't know about that. Like Tom Yum soup is kind of fishy, and like, but then when you taste it, you're like, this doesn't taste like it smells, and this is incredible. Have you ever like went over the line and just had a taste?
guy, I grew up in St. John's, Newfoundland. I've eaten fishy
Okay,
tasting fish.
fair enough.
Yeah, so then that's why I don't like it, because, or maybe just the way that those fish were prepared, it was just not something that that appealed to me. But to this day, like the taste, that really fishy taste doesn't appeal to me at all. So even things like I can enjoy like a brook trout that has sort of a little bit more of a like kind of like a pink kind of flesh and has a little bit of that fishy taste. Like I can enjoy that still, but like salmon, I don't do salmon, stuff like that.
I would
I can't eat
say,
crab or lobster or anything like that. Like I don't like any of that. Yeah,
A Newfoundlander that
to be
doesn't
honest
eat
with you, it's
lobster.
probably
I know,
Wow.
man, it's nuts, right? It's wild.
What was that,
So
Adam?
back to the pike head soup. Does it have that kind of nuances to it?
To be honest with you, I would say that if you have a problem with all those flavors, it might be a little much for you. I don't find that it's particularly fishy, but if you're sensitive to it, then it'd probably be a lot for you to handle. One thing I do is I roast all the before making stock. So I'll take, say if I caught a nice big pike, do the 5 fillet method. I'll take all the meat off. I'll take. The thing you always have to do is take the gills out. The gills are gonna make your stock or soup cloudy and bitter and fishy. It's one thing that has to go. So gills completely out. That's out. And then you can use the. So if you do the 5 fillet method, you kind of end up with this like square length of usable Y bone kind of stuff. So I take that, the tail, the fins, the collar, and the head, and I roast them in the oven till they're nice and golden, and that helps develop. It turns some of those like raw fishy flavors into more of an umami, like roasty flavors.
Cool.
And then I simmer that in like, so you never want to boil the stock. You just want to slowly simmer it, especially with fish. And the bone broths and everything that are popular these days, like you're like 24 hours, 48 hours, 28-day bone broth. Fish, you want to be like 20 minutes, half an hour. It's way more delicate. You're gonna pull everything out really quickly. If you do like several hours boiling, you're just gonna end up with this cloudy, murky, fishy mess.
Ugh.
So take your meaty bones and heads, roast them, simmer them very gently for about half an hour, and strain them really well, and you'll end up with this like really nice fish broth that you could use for fish chowder, fish soups.
Cool.
Even you could cook rice in and then top it with like a fried fillet or something like that.
Such
I
a
think
I
you've
don't
given
find
me a
it-
new mission for this winter. I think.
Perfect.
Yeah.
'Cause
Thanks.
you can use so much more like that. It's and the heads have all this. There's a lot of like when you have a fish fillet, it's just meat. It's just pure protein. There's nothing to it. Adam was asking me about walleye wings earlier and why those are special. Because there's all these connective tissues, fatty bits. There's a lot more going on in the connectors of the fish. We just take out that pure muscle and eat it. So it'd be like the tenderloin of the. So you're like, cool, like that's pure beef. There's nothing to it. It's just pure protein. And it's good, but tenderloin's not actually the most flavorful cut of meat. You have a
Whoa, whoa,
ribeye.
whoa, whoa, whoa. Hey, come on. No, I'm just kidding.
You have a ribeye or something like that. There's fat, there's connectors, there's tendons, and you're getting way beefier, way more texture, way more happening. And the same is in a fish. If you're using the collar, the head, or the wings, or whatever, you're getting into all these like connective tissues, different fatty deposits, cartilage. and sometimes that can be really good roasted or fried. It's kind of like a chicken wing. You can get into like some different like textures and stuff. Or if you're making a soup out of it, all that all that stuff holds onto collagen, which transforms into gelatin as you're cooking it, and that's going to give your soup like a hearty. You know the difference between like Lipton cup of soup and like mom's homemade chicken noodle soup.
For
Yeah.
The
sure.
whole chicken gets it's like almost lip smacking, like it sticks to your lips a little bit. That's that gelatin in there, and that makes a huge difference in the body of your soup. And pikehead is just chock full of that.
That's
You
wild that
can-
it doesn't take much to come off of it. Like
Yeah.
that's super
Yeah.
cool. And
So-
that you get that
So all that-
texture
you get
too,
the
like that thick texture. That's
So-
awesome.
Could you apply that principle to like most types of fish? Like, could you do that with a perch or like with a walleye or a crappie or something like that? Like, is it similar kind of theory, I guess?
So absolutely, I don't throw out any of my fish carcasses. They all go through this process, like, and I just turn them into soup. Say if I catch like a mess of perch, I'll do the same thing. Turn them into soup or stock, and then just freeze it, and then I'll make any chowder, like a fish chowder. Often people buy like the clam juice or whatever to make it, just to give it that like fish clam flavor.
Yeah.
I just use homemade fish stock, and it's just as good.
I have a question.
It's probably better
I have a
for you
question.
too. Less salty, I would imagine.
Yeah.
I have a question. Excuse me, class, if I may. What about the skin? Do you leave the skin on? Do you scale the fish? Do you leave the skin on? Do you eat the skin? If not, what do you do with it?
I always eat the skin. So I scale my fish. I don't always eat the skin. I say 90% of the time. There's sometimes if I'm getting a bunch of bluegills, where by the 8th one I'm like, okay, enough with this. I'll just trim them up. I love the skin. So even if I'm making a dish that doesn't need the skin in it, say I'm making like a risotto and I'm putting chunks of fish in, and where like the fish skin wouldn't work in that, I'll remove the skin, fry it separately, and then crunch on it like chips. It's
Nice.
so freaking good. You just scale it and then cook it in a little bit of oil. It just puffs up and fries, and it's like those like pork rinds or something. It's I don't know, something amazing about it.
That's cool.
The skin as well
That's
has that
interesting.
kind of fat layer, which has all this flavor and has a different mouthfeel than the sick like fillets.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they also, if you're cooking like a fish fillet, if you leave the skin on, you just scale. That skin can protect your fish while it's cooking, especially if you. I'm gonna back up a little bit. If you scale like say a bass and cook it, it's gonna curl up on you. But say there's like if you have like a rainbow trout or something, you don't have to worry about scaling so much, or salmon. That skin's gonna protect the fillet. So if you can fry it super hard on the skin side, and then say you're cooking the fillet for 5 minutes, you do 3.5, 4 minutes on the skin side, flip it and just touch it in the heat on the other side, and then it's done. That skin and the layer of fat in between the skin and the fillet has protected that fillet from drying out and overcooking the whole time. Where if you had a skinless fillet, you're subjecting that protein, that's pure protein, to heat. It's going to overcook the outsides by the time your insides are cooked through. Skin can act as a protectant. So even if you don't want anything to do with the skin, cook it with the skin on and then peel the fish off and throw the skin out. It's gonna.
That makes sense why they
Smart.
do crappie on the half shell, right?
Exactly.
I don't know if you've heard of that term. Yeah, you just leave the skin on and cook them skin side down. That's
Get a
cool.
much more delicate, tasty fillet out of the deal if you do that. So skin can serve a lot of purposes too. I recently heard that you can make these really cool prints. I'm not an artist by any means. There's people that are using the fish skins to make these crazy prints, and then you can like hang them up like on your wall or whatever, and they're really beautiful fish scale prints. So I'll look into that and see if that's something I could possibly do with my artistic fingers.
That sounds
Adam, your
very
wife
cool.
should pay attention to that. I think Mel might dig something like that.
Not if she has to touch like raw fish skin.
That's a
that might
couple's
be an
art
issue.
project.
Yeah. Here, honey, I'll do the dirty stuff.
Okay, well, I think we're gonna start winding it down. We've been going for like 55 minutes now. This has been a masterclass on cooking fish, and I've learned so much just from talking with you,
Same.
Adam. And
Super inspired. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for the awesome info.
Yeah, no problem. I'm glad you guys are digging it. I would love to see some pictures sent my way of meals you guys are making with it.
yeah, for sure.
Oh,
Count
now
on
the
it.
pressure's on. Well, Ben can't cook, so don't expect anything from him.
I'm not too bad. I
Gonna
can
try.
listen. I'm not like a very creative in the kitchen, but I can follow instructions like a boss. Okay, so
I'm pretty good with the knife,
that's my
and that's
good.
about it.
So
If you need me to like process veggies, I'm there. I can just like
Yeah.
chop up veggies with no problem. Yeah.
Ben is
Skin a
actually
fish.
pretty decent at like cutting the fillets off of a trout, so I'll give him that.
This National Hot Peg sandwich is not hard to make. It's a pretty
Cool.
easy recipe. My recipes don't tend to stray towards easiness. I'd say they're more medium to complicated recipes. Although I do put some simple ones out. That pike sandwich isn't that hard to make. You're frying fish and then you're dousing it in sauce and putting it on a bun. So it's not that hard. So that's the one that you guys should definitely try out.
Is it on your
I'm
website?
gonna do it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do
Awesome.
it. I've been
check it out,
dying
yeah,
to
for
try
sure.
it since I saw it like over a year ago. I feel like I saw that for the first time. I was like, oh my god, I need to eat that.
And then I'm gonna
Wait,
make soup out of the
yeah.
carcass.
Could you do that again? What
No.
was that?
I
What
will
was that sound? No? Okay.
Okay, Adam, thank you so much for joining us on the Fish On podcast. You've been just great, and yeah. Ben and the real Adam, do you have anything else you want to close with?
Yeah,
Thanks for watching.
I was also pleasantly surprised. I wasn't really sure what to expect out of it. Normally we're talking like fishing, but this was a nice like change of pace, and I like Ben said, I feel the same way, kind of inspired to like be better because I'm
For sure.
pretty garbage at like everything you've talked about tonight. So
Yeah,
And I think it's awesome that we got somebody that's so passionate about cooking. Like I've talked to like cooks before. I've talked to people in the industry that are working in the industry and really enjoy it. But when you're not working directly in the industry, you can have a certain extra level of passion behind it and certain level of love for it. And it seemed to shine through with some of the very intricate things that you were talking about tonight and some of the more exotic stuff that you're looking into. It's super cool to hear from you. Like, yeah, it's awesome. Thanks.
there
and
you
if
have
we
it.
can leave the
having me
audience
on.
with anything, this is the moment moving forward where, as Adam said, we're going to make carp great again. This is the beginning of that. It's going to be a trend. 2023 is full of carp recipes. I can see it now.
Those big old scales.
And for anyone who's still listening or watching us live, we're going to be hanging Discord for probably half hour or an hour after, so you can join us there. I think Jeff has linked it in the description, maybe, possibly.
I don't know if I
If
have,
not,
but I will put it somewhere.
okay.
Yeah, so thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If there's anything that you've taken away from this, it's that there's more to cooking your fish than just the fillets, and the Intrepid Eater can show you that. Go visit his website. What is it, Adam?
TheIntrepideater.com.
There you go. Check out theintrepid.eater.com. Follow him on Instagram. Just amazing content. Thanks, everybody. And we'll see you in the next one.
Ciao.